You end up going to Greece. You
Yes.
play 1 year. You got to scratch the itch. You got to call yourself a pro. How was that experience?
People want to say all these things about women's basketball. No one watches women's sports and all of that.
Speaking of the current state of women's basketball, I mean, you have to be proud of what's happening right now. Caitlin Clark, what she's doing to change the game. Did you hear what Miss Diana Taurasi said about it? Okay, don't get up. Do you think your identity got solely intertwined with basketball?
I remember getting an opportunity to go to the Lynx training camp and not taking it.
Should athletic experience count towards actual working experience?
The soft skills, the hard skills, social emotional skills that you can learn through sport, there's no better vehicle. A lot of coaches think that winning and developing good people are mutually exclusive. I think coaches can win games and win more games focusing on developing people first.
How do you develop people first?
I have these chapters in my life. Minnesota is a chapter, Kansas is a chapter, Greece is a chapter. And when I look at my chapters, I'm like, I know why I graduated from that space. I think it took me a few years to figure out what my real passion point was. And my passion point is coach training and development.
Welcome to another episode of You Only Die Twice. I'm your host, Warren Ward, and in this episode, I'm joined by Micaëlla Riché. Micaëlla is from Ottawa. She played on Team Ontario. She played on Team Canada as well, and she was a 4-year standout at the University of Minnesota before taking on a graduate program at the University of Kansas State. Played 1 year in Greece before getting into the business of basketball, and now a director of operations at Layup. And without further ado, let's get into it.
The fact that I'm 31 and still working in basketball full time is something I didn't know was a thing, but I'm rarely on court and I'm not coaching a team and I'm not playing the game, I'm not reffing, and I just know that the possibilities of industries in and around the game are endless, and if I had known about them earlier on, I'm curious to know where I would be. I don't think I love where I'm at, but I see certain passions and interests that I had as a younger girl, and I wonder what would have happened if I had fed those.
Like what?
Coloring, drawing, like some artsy things that I didn't know were art. You know what I mean? I love photography. I got into photography a little bit when I was playing in Greece. I just think music. Music is another piece of things. I would probably know how to dance a little bit more, better. But as a young athlete, sometimes you don't give yourself or receive permission to feed these other things because you should be focusing on your craft. You should be focusing on your athleticism. Because
it's the only way to make it, right? So they say. So you have to starve one side of yourself to keep feeding the other. So do you think your identity got solely intertwined with basketball?
Yes and no. I didn't start playing till later.
What's later?
8th, 9th grade.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was this height in 6th grade. And
you were which height in 6th grade?
This height in 6th grade. Yes.
Excuse me?
Yes.
You were 6'2" in the 6th grade?
Yes. I used to walk on the school bus and kids would yell Godzilla. Yes. It's okay to laugh. I've healed from that. But no, I've been called big my whole life.
I'm done with this interview already.
It's okay because I grew into it early, I guess. But people saw me and they were like, you play basketball. And I wanted to be like, no, you don't know me. So I didn't start playing till later. I kind of resisted it. But yeah, 8th, 9th grade, I got into it. Yeah. And I picked it up quickly. I think, again, being younger, playing a lot of the different sports, being a middle child of 2 brothers, playing outside. I'm a 90s baby, so we played outside and we did those things. I think just physical literacy was developed to a certain point where coming to basketball, it was just easy to learn how to catch, throw, run, dribble,
Your brothers
shoot.
probably helped you with that. Are they tall as well?
Yes, they're tall as well.
Okay.
And my older brother is the reason I play basketball.
Okay.
I wish I'd played him one-on-one a little bit more. I'd probably be a better player, but I ran from that a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Fair. No, my older sister, she played basketball. That's how I basically got into it. I wanted to beat her. So that's how I started competing. And
how much older?
She is 4 years older
Okay.
than me. Yeah. And it's funny. We just at the coffee shop not too long ago before you got here.
Uh-huh.
And I went there, and then I went there again with Rachel. And an older man was like, he asked me if I played for the Raptors. And it's like the same sort of stereotype. You just,
Yes.
you're tall.
Yes.
You're black.
Yes.
They just assume that you play basketball. The man was
Yes.
staring at me when I
Yes.
first walked in, but he didn't want to say nothing. I come back. He's like, oh, now he kind of felt, a bit more comfortable. But it's like, no, you know what I say now? I'm like, I say something wild. I say like, you know what? Like I work for the UN, or I'm a lawyer, or,
Yes.
I'm like a
Yes.
marine biologist. I'll say something off the cuff to get them to be like, oh, really? Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, no, I don't do
Yeah.
I don't do that. But don't
Yeah.
assume
Don't
that I play
assume.
basketball because I'm tall.
Yep.
But,
I've had a few of those moments too. Like, no, I golf.
yeah.
And people are like, oh. And I'm like, have a good day.
Yeah.
I don't want to have this conversation.
I
Like, you're
know.
so tall. Yes. You're so observant. Like, we're talking about this again, but I get it. It's an icebreaker for a lot of people.
And I'm sure you could speak to it. It must be a little bit more challenging for you to be a taller girl.
Yes.
Clothing, the assumptions you get,
Yep.
men being, like intimidated by you.
Yes.
Your dating pool is a little smaller.
Yes,
Unless
slim.
you want to get with the short kings. Shout out to the short kings.
Shout out to the short
Shout out to the
kings.
short. Shout out to, we have a short king. but still, it must
man.
be hard for you, or
Yeah.
harder for you to. So how did you battle that?
My height's been, like we said, my height's been a thing my whole life.
Yeah, Godzilla's crazy. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
yeah,
No,
that's
it's Godzilla. And that one like really caught me off guard. And I don't remember it hurting too much. Like I kind of just was like, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's a perk of being a military kid with really close in age with two brothers. Like they were my friends. So to a certain extent, there was a lot that like you couldn't, you know what I mean?
and they roasted you too. I'm sure.
And they roasted me too.
Yeah.
Facts.
And a
Facts.
military kid. So what? Like you moved around quite a bit then. Really?
Yeah.
Where'd you
we
live?
We started off in Barrie for a few years.
Interesting.
And then went to Kingston.
Oh,
also
even
interesting.
better.
Yes, middle school years up until 9th grade in Kingston, like 6th till 9th grade in Kingston. So that was rough. And then moved to Ottawa. And so spent some time in Ottawa, 10th grade till graduation, went to Minnesota, Kansas. And now I'm here.
That's how basketball really started for you in Ottawa.
In Ottawa.
Shout out to the nation's capital.
Shout out to the
I'm an
nation's
Ottawa
capital.
man.
Yes.
So-
Yes. Shout out to Andre. Do you know Andre Desjardins at Louis Riel?
Damn, you got the whole French thing.
Yes, I'm French.
I do not have any of that.
That's okay.
And I do not know Andre, but shout out to Andre.
Okay. Yeah. They ran a great program out there that really...
I know Louis Riel though. I know
Yes.
the school, but I don't know
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. Okay. He's been there for, since I was in high school. I graduated 2010, so he's been there for a hot minute.
I got there in 2008. That's probably why.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay.
went there at 18.
Okay.
Yeah. Before
Okay.
that, I knew nothing about Ottawa, but I'm so glad I went.
You liked it?
Loved
In
Ottawa.
your university years too?
Loved Ottawa.
Really?
Ottawa was the best decision I made.
Would you
for
go back
sure.
and live?
Okay, stop. No.
Okay. So point. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I wouldn't go back and live, but
Yeah.
I loved it for those times. I'll always go back.
Good.
It's great. It's just under construction too much. You know?
Yes, I could see
Like,
that.
My
I can
whole
see
5
that.
years under construction, so I'm good on
Really?
that.
Yeah.
But Ottawa's where you developed your skills in basketball, and
Mostly.
then that led you to Minnesota. That's hard to do at the time too, to go from
It is,
here
yeah.
to there. So like, talk about that process.
Yeah. So actually, I started right before leaving Kingston. So
Okay.
I had a little bit of an introduction at Frontenac Secondary School, where Leah Edwards went. So I could
Oh,
say
yeah?
that.
Okay.
Yes.
Shout out to Leah Edwards.
Yep. But no. So I think my size. Obviously, and back in 2010, I played in Minnesota 2010 to 14. I was a true big. I was a 5 in the Big Ten. So
Yeah.
the games changed a lot. When I went to Kansas State and I was a grad assistant,
Yeah.
we had shooting guards that were my height, right? Different body types.
Really?
But I was like, is this a conference thing? Because it wasn't that far apart
Right.
from my time playing to being grad assistant was right
So
away.
you mean girls were just bigger in your conference, and then they got taller when you got a little older?
I think players and youth in general have gotten bigger over the years. I see high school kids that I'm like, there were no boys this tall when I was in high
Right,
school. That's
right.
a fact. But I think different conferences probably look different in terms of style of play and body type for players. Big Ten tend to attract like real
Big.
physical. Yeah. But no, so back to your question, transitioning from playing in Kingston, Ontario, playing in Ottawa, going to Minnesota, I do attribute a lot of that ease of developing my game to the physical literacy that I had developed at a younger age. And I had a really great support system. And my mom went through it to make sure that these things were possible for us and that we had the opportunities. I could go to tournaments. I could, have access to these clubs and these practices and these resources that really helped me develop my game. So the right tools and resources and the right coaches and some work ethic. It was.
When you say that your mom went through it, what do you mean?
I just mean single parent. So when we moved from Kingston to Ottawa, my parents divorced.
Okay.
And so my mom had joined the military, and I remember at the time my mom was a lawyer and my mom was different things and then kind of was a parent for a while. But when she joined the military, it was really a career decision that she made to be able to support us with this transition that was happening with our family. And so there was a lot of times I remember she was deployed to Afghanistan when I first got to Minnesota. She spent some time on other tours, but I think the decision to join the military with the financial stability, the benefits, the family perks, was a decision that she made for the kids, for myself and my brothers. And I just remember a lot of tournaments where our teammates were at this hotel and going to the keg for dinner, and we had big coolers packed with lunch for the weekend and, road trips in her Corolla, but a lot of really beautiful moments and memories. And I'm thankful because I recognize the privilege that I had to have access to that. And I look at basketball now and I'm like, we think it's the most accessible sport, but there's a lot of real barriers for kids to participate and have a meaningful experience.
That's dope. Really, really well said.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about, driving to Syracuse and going to Rochester and all the Milton and all the places me and my dad and my mom, my sisters, we all drove and spent time together growing up. And I don't remember much of the games, but I remember all of that.
You remember those moments. Yeah.
So you were ready to go to Minnesota when you went, though.
I was. I remember it came down to Minnesota and Florida. I only took 2 official visits. I do regret that. I wish I had taken all 5 just to see and have other points of comparisons. Honestly, I look back, I was digging in my boxes and I'm looking at media books and letters from Kentucky, from Louisville, from Michigan State, from big programs that I'm like, you weren't even going to look at Maryland.
So then what made you choose Minnesota?
My mom. Well, my mom. I think they came in first.
Okay.
They were one of the first schools to recruit me. And they just cared about me as a person along the way. And I think when I came down to my visit, I visit Florida first. And there were certain things that I was like, this just doesn't align with my values. It doesn't align with the direction that I want to go in and the way I want to spend the next 4 years of my life. And it really did at Minnesota. It was a very natural fit. And I remember my coach saying when you know, and I knew. I knew. And I loved it. I loved my 4 years there. I loved my experience. I loved the teammates I made and had and friends I made. And I don't think I'd do it differently.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's very good. Very positive. And when you, after you left Minnesota, you played 1 year. You played in Greece?
No. After I left Minnesota, I went straight to Kansas State as a grad assistant.
Okay. So
yes.
Then you went to more school, grad assistant.
Yes.
You coached?
Yes.
And then you went and played overseas.
And then I went and played overseas.
How long were you a grad assistant?
3 years. So after Minnesota.
And then you went and played pro?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So right after Minnesota, I realize now in hindsight that I was burnt out. I remember getting an opportunity to go to the Lynx training camp and not taking it. And
excuse me?
Yes. And at the time it made sense in my mind. And now that I'm, facts. That's the second thing I'll say I regret. I don't regret the official visits. I will say I regret not taking that opportunity.
Right.
For me, it didn't seem like a real option at the time. And I think a lot of women go into basketball as a means to an end without pro dreams. And a lot of times, I fell into basketball. I fell into a scholarship. I was going to fall into this opportunity potentially in the league, and I just saw other things that I wanted instead. This grad assistant position was one of the things. I remember applying to a lot of different places. Eventually, I landed at Kansas State. But yeah, I did 3 years there, a lot of post-player development. I did a lot of recruiting, so recruiting operations, coordinating that, scouting reports, watched a lot of film, just supported with kind of everything behind the scenes. It's a really good opportunity. Not only you get your master's and you do your school, but you also kind of get this full tour of behind the scenes of an athletic department at a Power 5 school.
And at the same time, you were working on your own game.
Yes. So it's funny because
practicing with the team.
Yes, sometimes. So I tried to avoid it. I recognized how burnt out I was after my time at Minnesota. And so I tried to avoid it, especially in the beginning, but it became fun. And I found that being a player coach was so much better than being like a sidelines coach, in my opinion. And I got to show the players a lot of things, especially in the post when it came to that development. Like, this is what I mean. And it's working on you. So I promise you, if you do it, it's going to work on someone else. But yeah, and so I was on a F1 student visa for my master's. You get an extension that's a 1-year OPT while you can apply for your H-1B. And I have no idea what any of these acronyms mean. Okay. Visas. Right. Long story short, my work visa didn't get approved.
Got you.
And so I didn't want to come back to Ottawa. We talked about that.
Really? I wonder why. Being in the States and now coming back. You were in the States for what, 7 years at this time?
7 years at this point. Yeah. So I'd been in the States for 7 years and didn't get my work visa. And I was like, what do I do now? And I had some agents from when I had graduated Minnesota who I was still in touch with because I was supporting them with players on the recruiting side. And so I was like, is it crazy to think I might want to play again? And he was like, no. So I got a bit of film together, got in the gym just more intentionally. And then I ended up in Greece.
It's pretty smart. So you were not only feeding agents players to help them, but you were low key, sweetening the barrel for yourself.
Yes. It worked out great. I mean, I'm not a hard sell. But you're big in Europe. I'm not a hard sell. Yeah, that's sure. Factual.
And you played D1, so it counts. Yeah, definitely.
Stayed in shape. I think that's one of the biggest things. I'm like, if you stay in shape, your whole life will be easier. Just a lot of athletes finish playing and then they just like,
I know, let themselves go.
I'm like, bro, your life will be easier across the board.
It's funny. I work out more now than I did as an athlete, but there's no goal attached to it. I'm just doing it to do it. And also because I don't want to have any knee replacement surgery or something, that part, which I'm a candidate for. So I try to avoid all that by working out, skipping, and trying to stay in shape. So it makes sense. It does. But people do let themselves go. You see a lot of the athletes on the podcast. I'm like, yo, this is what you look like now.
Yeah.
No, staying in shape definitely helps. Yeah. So matters. You end up going to Greece. You play 1 year. You got to scratch the itch. You got to be you got to call yourself a pro. How was that experience?
I'm glad I did it.
Okay.
I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I experienced it. I think going after 7 years of being 24/7.
Yes.
And then you get to this pro experience and you have one practice per day at 9:30 p.m. and one game a week. And I'm like, it's 11 a.m. I've done 16 things. And I have so much time left. Like, what do I do with this, right? That's why I say I got into photography. So I walked every street of the city I was in. And
where in Greece were you?
I was in Thessaloniki, so northern Greece.
I'm surprised you said that like that. That was impressive. I was like,
Thessaloniki. Okay. I got a lot of practice. But no, I was like, what do I do with myself? And this photography piece is something that, like I said, I'd always been interested in and I never had given myself time and space to try it. And I did. But yeah, it was a challenging experience. Like I said, I'm glad I did it. But I didn't want to play another year. Yeah.
Can I ask why? How did you deal with the isolation of being in Europe? Because it's people think like if you're in Greece, you think, oh, the south of Greece, but you were in the north of Greece.
Yeah. And so that was, it was still beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but the isolation was, it's interesting because isolation has never been like a thing I fear. No. Because I always just work.
For sure.
So I'm like, good, I can be left alone 100%. While I work.
Yeah.
I think that piece of like isolation with no purpose, passion, clear direction is where it was really challenging. Because if I'm isolated and I have a plan or something I'm working towards, it's different versus being kind of like, okay, I'm here, I didn't get my visa, I don't know what's next. This is like a holding space. So that I think is what was most challenging.
And you wanted, like when you were done graduating, you wanted to go play overseas. That was what you wanted to do, or you just did it because the opportunity came?
I did it because I didn't get my work visa and I didn't want to go back to Ottawa.
So you just escaped.
I just escaped.
And you used basketball as a tool to get out of here.
And I used basketball as a tool. I would say escaped or like gave myself a buffer year or, I also wanted to, I remember thinking I have a chance now I had it before. You don't oftentimes get a second chance at things like this.
Yeah.
So do it. And what else are you going to do at this point?
Fair. How old were you?
This was in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
How old am I now?
31.
And we're in 2024.
We're gonna leave the math some another time. It's all good.
I was like 22, maybe 23 at the time.
How was it? How was it meeting new people?
In Greece or just in general?
In Greece.
It always was often the same like starting point with them just staring. It was a lot of like, why are you in our city?
Yeah, you seem to get that a lot. I wonder why.
Yes, I do. It wasn't Godzilla, so that's a plus. But
we're literally gonna put a Godzilla meme.
Oh my gosh, I'm here for it. It's okay. Like I said, I've healed from that, so we can.
I'm playing.
But no, meeting my teammates, it was interesting to see the way they do basketball in Greece.
Yeah.
And overseas, it's clubs, right? School and sports not tied.
Mm-hmm.
So we had pros on our team who were 15, 16 years old. We had women who just had their regular job.
Yeah.
We had like everything in between. So it was just very interesting to see a completely different side to sport where they have pro circuits out there and there's high level athletes who also have a whole life. And who don't, like, I remember my teammate being like, I have a cough, I'm sitting out. And I was like, what do you mean? But I was like, oh, that's how they do it over here. Like, you're not feeling good, you rest. You know what I mean? So I think it was interesting to see sport being successful under a different model than we know it to be.
Especially, like, in the women's game.
Why do you say especially in the women's game?
Because overseas it's a little bit different, like you said. Like I cough. There's none of my teammates sat out with coughs.
Got you.
That's what I mean. It's like, but just the whole culture of basketball in Europe is different. It's more of a team game. I mean, your teammates. It's like the group chats popping when the season's on. As soon as the season's done, it's crickets in there. Like everyone's so close. Everyone's your friend until
it's very much a job out here.
You know.
And I think that was the relationship I had built with basketball for so long, was that it was my job. I'm a product. I need to perform with these deliverables, you know, that it's fine. Yeah. And it's been fine my whole life, but I didn't like stop and realize that until
you never really tied yourself to the game. You literally used it as a tool to advance your life.
Yeah. And I had fun doing it. I was like, oh, I enjoy this. Like playing basketball, I do love it. I'm glad I still play. But it was never ball is life. It was never my mind is cloudy. Let me watch some film. Like,
do you think more people have your state of mind or the latter, where ball is life? You know,
I think on the women's side, we haven't often seen ball be life. So a lot of women go into it with my mindset of like, let me just get through this for school, for a scholarship, so I can get to my next stage. I think that might change now with the way women's basketball is portrayed and the way it's actually a whole livelihood now. And it was at the time that I was playing too. I just had never seen it and I didn't strive for it. I didn't like see myself playing overseas, traveling countries, winning these games in front of all these people. Like I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I really want that. I think on the men's side, because they've seen ball be life, you see, I've had 26, 27-year-old men tell me they're going to the league. So like, I think ball is very much more life on that side of things because of the representation that they've had in the game.
Are those men in the league? Just curious.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Interesting.
Fair question.
They should come on the pod.
That would be an interesting conversation. I'd definitely tune in. I would.
Speaking of the current state of women's basketball, I mean, you have to be proud of what's happening right now in the, with, not only at the pro game, but Caitlin Clark, what she's doing to change the game. The world being outraged, at her salary, her $76K, and putting only before it, which is hilarious. Yeah. Did you hear what Miss Diana Taurasi said about?
I did.
And what do you think about that?
I think Caitlin spoke last night, and she came out hot, hit a lot of tough shots, did her job the whole game, and I was curious to see because listen, DT. I'm an absolute fan.
I love her. She's amazing.
Love DT.
She's amazing.
I think she's saying some interesting things. I think her observations over her career in the league is valid. I think when it comes to Caitlin, it's tricky because you see these younger. I'm curious to see Angel. I'm like, she's 6'2" and she's a dog, but how is she going to transition playing against some of these 6'8", 6'7", 6'6" women? That's going to be a different ball game.
And they're big. You know what I'm saying?
They're big.
Yeah.
They're big. Yeah. Right? So.
And girthy.
Yeah. So I think, how does a rookie transition to the next stage? How did I transition from high school to graduate to postgraduate to pro, right? Like, that looks different for everyone. But I think that regardless, you can only prepare to a certain extent. And the next chapter is going to have things that you're like, I didn't know this was coming. So yeah, I saw DT's comments. I respect everything she says. I was also like, I'm curious to see how Caitlin does at the next level. But for the sake of women's basketball, I'm really happy to see how she played last night, and I think she's going to keep building on that.
I agree. I think the sky's the limit. I think the salaries will increase. I think the marketing dollars will come, and then it'll make the game.
People want to say all these things about women's basketball. No one watches women's sports and all of that. But as soon as they started marketing the game, marketing the players, tying stories to these people who are playing, the viewership, the revenue, the attention. So I'm like, why did we not understand that this was a marketing play from the beginning? We're not saying pay the women millions of dollars, but we're saying that this marketing is going to generate and that the percentages can be similar on both sides. But comparing the WNBA and the NBA, even from a game perspective, they're different.
Very, very, yeah,
they're
very
different
much
entities.
so. And it's interesting because, like, this is probably the first year, and I think everyone said this, that even myself, I could name more women than I could men playing in the Final Four.
Yeah.
You know, like, I knew Zach Edey.
Yeah,
he's Canadian.
Yeah,
but everyone on the women's side, like, we were watching to see, Caitlin and
they can hoop.
Yeah,
they can hoop.
Juju, we were watching to see. Juju's nasty.
She's
nasty,
nasty,
man.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Really good player. Like, I can't wait to see her next year.
Same.
Yeah,
same.
After you put the ball down and you ended things, what did you do?
I went home to Ottawa. At mom's house.
Same. I've been there.
Yeah. And I remember going to Good Life and Mavati to try to be a sales associate or get a job at a gym. I was like, okay, this is something. I have a degree in kinesiology. I was like, let me start with this.
Okay.
We're in Ottawa, you gotta
start somewhere.
Yeah. At the time, I wanted to be in basketball, but I didn't want to coach.
Okay.
So I didn't know what else was out there. I just remember downloading the Indeed app and swiping and seeing an ad come through for a national scout with North Pole Hoops. And that was in Toronto. It was in Mississauga. And so I got a call back from them fairly quickly, went to Toronto, did the interview, ended up getting that job, moved to Toronto, moved to Brampton specifically. And I worked for a year as a national scout. I think that was the best decision I could have made. Coming to Toronto after having grown up in Ottawa for the most part and played overseas for 7 years, because I had no brand, I had no contacts, I had nobody out here in Toronto, except the few coaches that I had played with for Team Ontario or for the national team. So yeah, coming out and being at North Pole Hoops, I was in the gym 365 days out of that entire year that I worked with them. I got to see basketball from Halifax to BC. I got to run different camps. I got to do talent evaluation and connect players with post-secondary coaches. But really, I think the biggest part of that journey that was valuable to where I'm at now is I got to see the full landscape of Canadian girls basketball. Now, a lot of things have changed since I was in that position from 2018 to 2019. But it really gave me a great picture and accuracy of where a coach is at, where's the women's game at, the girls' game at, what's the club structure, where's OBA, Jewel, OSBA, this, that, who runs what programs. And it's interesting because basketball in Toronto specifically is kind of the Wild West. And so it really gave me a clear understanding of who are the big fish, what's the women's game direction, how many girls are playing, what are the parents' questions, concerns, what are the coaches' levels of development, what do they do, how do they run their practices, how do they coach humans, and so that was a very interesting piece of my journey.
Interesting, because you obviously the skills you developed as a player helped you in that job, but you essentially didn't have a plan. You were just winging it and trying to figure things out as you went along. Even after having a master's degree and all this experience and doing it, quote unquote, the right way, you still were just kind of figuring it out. Do you didn't have a long career. So were you always thinking about the exit plan, or were you just kind of going day by day essentially?
I'm very much a day-by-day person.
Okay.
People are like, what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, I don't know. But I know what I need to get done today, this week, this month, and this year, right? So I'm very much like a one step at a time person. And I'm in places doing things that I couldn't have dreamed of if I was trying to dream about them 10 years ago, right? And so I'm a firm believer of doing the little things right every day. And eventually you look up and you're like, whoa, I'm here. To your point about I was winging it, I was absolutely winging it. I had no idea. All I knew was that, okay, I did recruiting at Kansas State. Yeah. I know what kind of players coaches want. I know who's a Power 5 kid versus who's a other Division 1 teams kid.
Just through all your experience playing and
And I also have skills that I think this is important for people transitioning outside of sport. I have skills that I didn't know were skills until I saw other people do it. And I was like, such as like spreadsheets and organization and communication and just the whole administrative side of things, I think is a big piece. I think managing people and managing teams is a thing where you can have a lot of, I was a team captain for my junior and my senior year at Minnesota.
Which is managing a team.
Yeah,
and very transferable.
Obviously some of the academic skills I had translated, but I think just from top to bottom, when I was winging it in my job as a national scout, I was fully prepared. I just had to put the pieces of my experience together to fit this opportunity that I was in.
You said in an article once that if you think you're working hard, work harder.
Yeah.
That's the whole
I don't remember where did I say that?
I think it was one of those Northville Hoops articles. I went back. I was
think you're working hard, work harder. Yeah. Yes.
It could have been at Minnesota, actually.
Either one of those places makes it sound it sounds right. I do still think that to be true. I used to think people who were like work smarter, not harder, were lazy, and I think the people who were saying that were lazy. So I saw that saying as lazy.
Yeah.
I think you have to work smart and work hard. I don't think anything comes easy. I mean, you're putting on the show. What people see on Instagram, do they see the work that goes on behind it?
Well, they don't see these people. Yeah.
They don't see those people. They don't see Rachel emailing me. They don't see us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that people see a product, and a lot of times, a lot of people I've worked with and engaged with seem to think that it just comes to life.
I know. The reason why I asked that question is because you took things that you didn't know, like you indirectly put these two things together, the things that you just did naturally, and then worked hard to identify them and then found a path.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Thank you.
That's very impressive. And I think that's where you can talk about an athlete transition. That's it. That is, you're taking the skills that you've learned, things that have just happened, and you make a career out of it.
And I think I didn't know that I was going to swipe on Indeed and see this job as a national scout. I was like, that's a thing in Canada.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that in each chapter that I was in, I worked my hardest in that space, and I graduated. Every space that I was in, I have these chapters in my life. Minnesota is a chapter, Kansas is a chapter, Greece is a chapter. These last 4 or 5 years are a chapter.
Right.
And when I look at my chapters, I'm like, I know why I graduated from that space. And it was because I took what I was doing very seriously. I worked very intently at it. And when I did come to the next thing, I fell into those jobs, I was preparing myself for them along the way. Without even knowing. Yeah. And I think a lot can be said about doing the little things where you're at, even if they don't seem like they're really that important.
Yeah, no, well said. And that's very tangible for anyone else who's going to listen to this. If the skills we learn in sports are, everyone says, there's so many transferable skills. If that's the case, should athletic experience count towards actual working experience? So should I be able to put this on my Okay, don't get up.
Yes. Sorry to interrupt your question.
No, all good. All good. Yes. I see you getting excited. I love it. It should count. Like I should be able to put that on my resume and say, I played at this, but I was a captain of the team. I manage the team. I'm responsible for A, B, C, D, and this is how it translates to the work that you're going to be doing, etc. Like if I played 10 years overseas, I played 6, 3 here, 3 overseas. I should be able to take all those things and put them on a resume, and I should be able to apply to a job, and a well-paying job at that too. Not a baseline entry $40,000 job, because if you think about it, someone coming out of school at 22, 23 years old, whatever the case is, they don't have the same experience that I have. I've been put under pressure.
Yep.
Right? So I should be able to apply for that. What do you think?
some athletes make incredible X, Y's, or Z's at this other position, and some athletes are terrible.
Okay.
And I've never really seen anything in between.
Okay.
I think the lessons, the soft skills, the hard skills, the social emotional skills that you can learn through sport, there's no better vehicle. And if you look at the player perspective versus the youth coaching perspective, and I can look at both, I think the player perspective, sometimes we're coddled and sometimes things just appear.
Sometimes?
Okay, right? I'd pull up to practice in Minnesota, water bottles were filled, towels were lined up, the scoreboard was on, the lights were on, everything was just done. So
Shoes,
I think that,
practice gear, socks. Yeah.
and that's what I mean when I say the little things, because I watched some of my teammates go through 4 years without ever saying thank you to a team manager. And I also watched other people who recognized, supported, or even just said thank you. And I think that just that simple perspective will mean two very different things for athletes when they go on to the next level. Now, from a coaching perspective, like we said, sport is the absolute best vehicle for anything you need to teach humans. That's a strong statement. Sport is the best vehicle to teach people soft skills, hard skills, social, emotional skills.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches don't do that intentionally. Coaches think winning and developing humans, a lot of coaches, let me not blanket statement that, a lot of coaches think that winning and developing good people are mutually exclusive, because some of the things that it takes to develop good people could be soft or aren't sport how we know sport to be. And it's always been done that way, so why would I do it differently? And I'm coaching how I was coached, and this worked for me, so why wouldn't it work for them?
Yeah.
So I think that if coaches can approach developing athletes and developing sport in a more intentional way, I think there can be a recipe for athletes transitioning to the next level at a much higher percentage than it is right now. And I've done no market research on this. From my personal experiences of seeing athletes transition to the next level, that's what I've seen a lot of.
What do you currently do now?
I'm currently the director of basketball operations at Layup.
Okay.
So Layup is a charity. We deliver cost-free programs centered on the culture of basketball across neighborhood improvement areas in Toronto. We deliver programming to youth 6 to 29.
Mm-hmm.
So about 6 to 14, we're on court. We deliver evidence-based basketball curriculum developed intentionally to develop like high-level basketball skills as well as social emotional development for the youth. And our youth 15 to 29, we have a youth coach development pathway. So to your point about should I be able to put X or Y or Z on my resume, I firmly believe that if you coach a sport, there's no job that you go into that you're not going to be better at. It can be anything from a plumber to a CEO to a teacher. You're going to be better at that job because you coach sports. I believe that. Now, what we're working on currently, we have kind of three big pillars. One is the programming, evidence-based programming for kids to develop the skills they need on and off the court. Coaching pillar, which is my passion point. And the plan is over the last 4 years, we've done a lot of work. We developed a coach guide, which I have a copy for you in the car.
Love that.
We developed a coach guide. Everything we do is evidence-based with our coaches. And so going into the next 4 years, the plan is to develop a very clear pathway that can be a youth employment program for coaches that they can firmly put on their resume. So not only learning how to coach kids, work with other people, manage their times, make a practice plan, deliver on that practice plan, do the befores and afters of practice, but also be able to try photography, learn about storytelling and digital media, learn about broadcasting, right?
Why not?
Maybe podcasts, maybe we can have a group of youth come here. So everything we do also is teach play. So we don't want to put a PowerPoint up and tell people about something. We want them to experience it and live it.
That's the best way to learn.
It's the best way to learn.
And figure out what you want to do.
That part, because I thought I wanted to be a strength coach, and I did it my internship in the weight room, and I was like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And then I was back to square one with my whole planning that I had done 4 years of school for.
Yeah. Forgive me, I don't remember the country, but I know it's either Sweden, Norway, or Finland, one of those three. They have a program where kids are 17, they go and they shadow a lawyer, doctor for 6 months, and then they go to school. Because
That's genius.
After, it's like you figure out what you want to do, and if you like it, you try it for a while. You literally do the day-to-day tasks of a lawyer, doctor, whatever else, and then you go ahead and go to school for it to figure out if you want to do it. So you are essentially helping and have a program for transition.
Yes.
It's dope.
We do, and so
Really
we call it crossover. Haha.
Okay.
But yeah, and that's again for myself growing up, if I had the chance to try these other things, I don't know what I would have been doing.
Same. I feel the same way.
Yeah. And especially basketball is so unique. Like, what other sport has sneakers and fits and music, hip hop, and like photography and videography so intricately tied to it? You look at marketing and you look at retail and so there's just so much behind the scenes.
Everyone in this room right now is tied to basketball in a different way.
And you're working full time in basketball, and are you playing, coaching, reffing?
Me? No.
Exactly.
Yeah, no. I'll never coach or be a ref. I give texts all the time. You say one word to me, it's a T.
See, I don't call nothing. I'm the opposite. I'm like, nope, unless it's out of bounds, play through it.
So between your playing career and now, which one of those gives you a much more sense of like accomplishment?
That's a difficult question.
That's why I asked it. Wrote it myself.
Wrote it myself.
He hates when I say that.
Oh my gosh. I would like to say both. Am I allowed to say both? Oh my gosh. Both. They're like different things.
Explain both.
I would say my playing years had more immediate gratification, and my current professional career has more long-term gratification.
See, well said. You could do it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I am so glad you believed in me. Yeah, I mean, my playing career wasn't that long, but I worked on a skill, and within a month, I was better at it.
Yeah.
And I could see the direct result of putting the work in.
Yeah.
Now, there's things I've been working on. That coach guide I told you about was 3 years in the making, and I almost lost my mind. Right? But there's that piece of trusting the process and knowing to do the little things and having seen the result from it when I played to believe it to be true in this stage of my career.
Yeah. No, I'm the same. I mean, basketball instant gratification gave me a bit of like delusion that I could even do something like this. Like, I grew up with a stutter, so speaking on camera wasn't something I thought I'd be doing. But this is like getting over a fear. Every episode, is getting over a fear. Every time I get into a game, when I like if I'm broadcasting, it's getting over the fear every single time. And like I just do it. And I try and get better at it, and not wanting anything in return, because when you're playing basketball, it's like I practice so that I can be good in the game. I practice so that I can get to the next level. With this and everything else that I'm doing in my life, there is no immediate gratification. It's just one brick at a time. And hopefully you look up and there's a wall. Eventually.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And that piece that you're saying of doing it, and I just do it and I just do it again. And every time you win those little battles and you chip away at those fears, and so you weren't nervous at all before starting. Just because you did this so many times. No.
I almost talked myself out of doing this. If
Why?
It wasn't for Rachel or this
project.
The whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah.
That goes to say how important your support system is, because I know I've had dreams and visions, and I would have been too fearful to bring some of those to life without the right people. Yeah. No, shout out to the team.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I even now, like, making TikTok videos, like I see myself, it's like I'm so cringy. I don't like it. I don't like seeing myself.
I'm not on the TikTok wave yet.
But I do it because, and I told Tristan this. I said I do this because my own cringe worthiness is not more important than the actual task. This is for other people. Yeah. That's more important than my own needs, and it always will be. I believe in this. So I'm going to continue to do it, even if I'm subject to judgment, I get made fun of. We have a video that 2 million views. I'm in a lot of group chats just getting roasted. I don't care. This is more important.
Yeah.
The having people come on and share their experience is more important than what I could be feeling for a time,
And that's a really strong why. And it shows as to why this is still alive and thriving and looks as beautiful as it does. How'd you get into this then? Like, did you just wake up and was like, I'm going to do a podcast?
Well, no. I mean, hold on. Am I being interviewed?
Sorry. I am curious.
No, I'm joking. Well, I had an idea for this. I was like, I kept getting asked because people saw me on TV every now and then. I was doing the broadcasting. I was working with 905, and I'm working with the Raptors. So people just asked me, they assumed that I made a smooth transition. And I didn't like the assumption. It's like, well, no, like I've actually been dealing with this low key on the side, like internally being like, okay, what am I going to do now? I work in sales during the day. I love that. But is that really what I was going to do when I'm done playing? I thought after a 6-7 year career, even a 10-year career, I'd have enough money that I could do whatever I want to do, and I can invest in a business, et cetera, et cetera. So I kept getting asked about this topic, and I'm like, well, it's not smooth. It's been actually quite difficult. So, and I know other athletes, talk to me about that and ask me how, they can get into broadcasting. And I'm like, okay, well, this is like, there's a commonality here. Mm-hmm. So I approached Rachel, we talked about it, and she's like, this is a podcast. And then I approached Tristan, and I approached Ray, and I approached Claire and the whole team and Ellis, and it became a thing. It became a thing. And the more I talked about the idea, and the more, honestly, I'll be honest, like the more validation they gave me to do it, it gave me the confidence I needed to believe in it. And I was at Burger Drops in Liberty Village, and I'm literally about to call Ray and tell him about the idea. He's standing outside, and then I hear, like, I'm on the phone, but I hear his voice in the background. And I'm like, this is meant to be, because I just happened to go there, and I walked there that day. I usually drive. I'm lazy, so I usually drive. But I walked to Liberty Village that day, and then we ended up sitting in his house, eating burgers, talking for like 2 hours.
Wow.
So the way it came together, and the subject matter, like I said, I believe in it. It's important.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna get the same story twice.
Yeah.
And to me, that's amazing. Like some podcasts, the shit they talk about, it's very redundant. It's like the same guest over and over. Everyone that comes on this has a different story in the way they've dealt about it, which means the content is endless.
Yeah.
So that's the why, that's the how, and the what, and I think
that's cool. Yeah, that's a really powerful why.
In between.
Yeah.
But I thoroughly enjoy this.
Yeah.
I thoroughly enjoy hearing people's stories and some of the things you've talked about already today. Yeah. It's very powerful.
And it's needed, because to your point, we were just talking about athletes who think the transition is smooth, and everyone's pulling up to you like, oh, you're this cool hotshot, and
I wouldn't go that far.
But they think you fell into what you are. You're so lucky.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's not. It's not. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of like I said, but with basketball, I was working at something, and then I could see the results. I don't even know if I'm getting better as a broadcaster. Like I do know, I've been told, but it's like, there's no immediate gratification with this. This is a long-standing thing, and it's about the process. It's literally about showing up here and enjoying this. Like every interview that we've done, I have thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Thoroughly, I would do it again. I would talk for hours. I wouldn't even shut up right now. So,
no, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, you should do your own, I guess. You're over here interviewing me.
No.
I do have a question for you though. In what ways are you looking to continue to contribute to the growth, of women's basketball? Because that seems to be, something that's extremely important to you.
Yeah. So I mentioned it earlier. My passion point is coach training and development. When I joined Layup, I was bringing all of my high level basketball experience with me, and I had none of the youth side of things that I know now. But I came with interest and curiosity and wanting to learn, and I'm a nerd at heart. So being able to mix this passion for basketball and this love that I have for research and learning, I think it took me a few years to figure out what my real passion point was. And I think it took me trying so many different things, from my GA years, writing scouting reports, to where I'm at now. What's next for me is focusing on this coaching, training, and development piece. I think you look at a coach and you're just a good coach, or you're not a good coach. It just is, or it isn't, right?
It's really that simple, black and white?
I mean, you tell me. I'm sure you've had coaches, and you don't really ask yourself, like, what was their development? What was this? You just see a coach, or you're coached by a coach, and they're either good or bad. There's no certificate. I mean, there's the NCCP, and I don't want to talk about this here. But I think a lot of coaches, especially if they're new to it, first of all, a lot of women will self-select themselves out of coaching. If you put a hiring coaches poster up on the wall, you're going to have a ton of men and no women, because a lot of women will just think that being a coach means you need to know how to write this up at the last 2 seconds of the game to win and shoot a three, or you have to, there's a bar in a lot of people's heads about like, I have to meet this to be able to call myself a coach. So I think a lot of people just don't go naturally into that space, especially when we're talking about women. And we've seen that to be true at Layup, where we have to intentionally find these young women who are 15, 16, lure them with paid work, right? So that they can have a job, and show them along the way that you are a coach through a lot of meaningful experiences and through a lot of moments of connection and through a lot of moments of small victories and successes where they come in not saying a word and then they're leading a whole gym of 20 kids by the time they leave, right? So back to your original question. My passion point is coach training and development. I believe that sport as it is now has skills development and has people development as mutually exclusive things. And I think the two belong together. I think coaches can win games and win more games by focusing on developing people first and just having that lens on everything that they do.
How do you develop people first?
I think, I'm so glad you asked. When you look at core human needs, everyone needs to feel a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to be met with manageable challenges where they're at, right? And everyone needs to have meaningful opportunities to contribute if you're playing on a team, if you're playing a sport. When those three things are present, you'll have... Do we need to pause?
No.
When those three things are present, coaches have a different lens on everything they do. I'll give you a simple example. We're going to do a warm-up drill, right? And just starting that with welcoming every kid personally. I'm so happy you're here. Not, hey, all, just hi, Warren. Hi, Rachel. Hi, right? Meeting people where they're at and connecting with them individually. So that sense of belonging, making sure that when someone walks into a gym, they're like, yeah, I belong here. I lost my train of thought.
Okay. You'll get it back.
Yeah, right? It's going to come back here in a second.
Talking about welcoming each kid.
Oh, yeah. How do you do that? Yeah. How do you coach people,
yes,
humans, and the technical skills? So I think just coming in and understanding, okay, if my kid is acting up and they're not listening in practice right now, it's not about me. It's not personal. It's not that they don't respect me. It's not that they're not disciplined. It's that they have some need that's not being met right now. And how do we intentionally develop that? Or how do we intentionally target that, right? So I think if you have a kid at the end of the bench who's checked out, are they having meaningful ways to contribute to the team? Are they scoring buckets? Because if they're not, what else are they doing, and how do they know that they matter in this space and that they have something to contribute? And are you asking kids to do certain things at a level that they just can't, like, this challenge isn't feasible for me, right? So all this to say, I think you can coach both by just delivering sport more intentionally. And once you know about these needs, you can make sure that they show up in the things that you do.
Right. And that attitude and that perspective develops a better human, which makes the transition a lot easier. Because if you've been coddled as an athlete forever, or you've had things go your way, when life hits you and it doesn't, you're not prepared to deal with that.
Yeah. Injury,
you stop playing for whatever reason, you're not prepared to deal with that.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting perspective and the way to put it.
Well, and not only does it better prepare you as an athlete, but it's hiding the veggies in the spaghetti sauce, because all of a sudden now
never heard that before.
Okay, it's a Mike McKay thing. I definitely stole it from there. But you know, kids don't want to eat their veggies. If you hide in the spaghetti sauce, they're more likely to eat the broccoli or the green peppers.
Makes sense.
Right? Hiding the veggies in the spaghetti sauce. Okay. So if we use a games-based approach and just treat humans like good humans, right? With these kids, some of these things coaches do, they think it's good. They think you have to break a player down to build it back up. They think, and it doesn't have to be that way, right? So I think back to your point, not only does this prepare people better for the transition, but it develops all of these future of work skills. You need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to think critically. You need to be able to collaborate with others to be successful in the future of work. Yeah. You need to be in tune with yourself and know how to regulate your emotions. You need to be able to play a sport and be healthy and have fun doing it, right? You look at the long-term athlete development model. How many coaches are making their kids do crazy stuff at 6, 7, 8 years old? Right. That's not in their physiological stage of development, right? So I think for coaches,
you gotta keep pushing through, pain and run 17s and I know.
And this is where we say you coach how you've been coached. And when we don't really know any other way, and when it worked for me, why wouldn't it work for them? We have a lot of coaches, especially at the youth level, who are coaching how they've been coached and don't understand that they're doing harm to players. And a lot of coaches are doing a lot of really great things too. But again, with this framework around the big three, belonging, challenge, contribution, it just keeps a very simplified framework and lens for coaches on how they can add and tweak what they're already doing to just amplify their results. And at the end of the day, you're just developing better people more intentionally.
Which is the goal. Well, before we conclude, we have a game that we like to play for 3. You can answer any of the following with one word or one sentence.
Okay.
Okay? You ready to play? Can you shoot threes?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. All right, great. I'm just
Lace up.
No, I'm good. I don't want no smoke. I don't want no smoke. Describe the journey that you've been on thus far in one word.
Fun.
When people hear your name, what should they think?
One word?
Or one sentence, either or.
I was gonna say tall, but that goes against everything that we've been talking about this whole time, right?
I'm done with you.
When people see me, one thing that they should think.
Tall can't be it. Tall cannot be it.
I'll say kind.
Okay, that's good. I think the second person to say that. If every athlete had to do one thing when they initially stopped competing in whatever sport it would be, whatever they're doing, whatever abrupt life thing happens, what should they do? What's the first thing they should do? One word or one sentence? Take your time. We need some Jeopardy music in the background right now.
Right? I think they should go do something that's completely out of the box. Go do an experience. Go do something that they wouldn't necessarily choose, but just try something new.
That's a paragraph. I'm playing with you.
Try something new.
I'm playing with you. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think every athlete after finishing their career should go try something new and out of the box and just see.
Just to touch upon that, what if that is completely scary and you don't even know what to do because this is all you've done?
You'll get through it and you'll be like, oh, wow, I'm okay. I can do this again.
So then feel the fear and do it anyway.
Feel the fear, do it anyway. Yes.
All right, my friend.
I saw the slap, so I'm going to stop at that. Yes.
No. I want to say thank you so much for being here, number one. Number two, I think your journey thus far and what you're doing and how passionate you speak about this topic is very refreshing. And I want to say I don't even really know you all that well, but I am proud to know you already just because of I think the changes that you're making and that you're going to make. I really admire the athlete journey that you've been on. I really relate to that. I think even up until a few years ago, I was technically just winging it too, trying to figure it out and not even really letting people know that, you know, and it's helping me to be like much more free and talking about the fact that, I'm winging a lot of shit. No one knows what they're doing. You know, like it's okay. It's okay to do that way. But the skills that I've learned as a human, as you talked about, and not just as an athlete, have helped me to get here. And I can't wait. Shit.
At least it wasn't me. It
exactly.
was one of us.
I can't wait to see where else it leads to. And I just hope it's positive. So thank you for that. I've learned that already in this episode.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
This was fun. Enjoyed getting to know you a little bit more too in the team.
Sure.
So thanks for having me, y'all.